there's going to come a time, especially imagine after the rapture, so when Jesus Christ comes in the twinkling of an eye without warning and takes out, we don't know how many, several million, hopefully much more than that,
Hopefully.
Christians from this earth to be with him forever in heaven, and we're to comfort each other with those words, Kevin. What an amazing thing.
Amen.
And we'll talk about that in a minute. But there's going to come a time after that where people are only going to accept supernatural explanations of things. The supernatural will become the natural, right? In other words, the paranormal will be the new normal. There's going to come a time when people no longer wonder if there is a God, but they're going to be seeing that they've got to make a choice at that point. And so we're going to talk about, in this update, those 4 choices they're going to have in the end time.
Well, Bill, how about these 4 final religions? Can you enumerate a little bit?
Yeah, well, let's talk about Christianity. You know, the bride of Christ,
True
i.e. the
Christianity.
church, right, is going to be raptured out. Is that the end of Christianity on the planet? No, of course it's not. We find out that Christianity will go on in through all the way until Christ returns. And but the issue is we live in the age of grace right now, right? There's a period of time called, Christ even calls the patience of the saints, and that's in Revelation 13, verse 10, and Revelation 14. And it's a time where it says even, because there'll be martyrdom going on. This is the issue. And that's, of course, why the urgency to accept Christ now in the age of grace is so tantamount. Because afterwards, receiving Christ is probably going to cost someone their life, and it's not going to be the popular choice because of all this deception that's going around. So Christianity will still exist. We find out that there'll be people giving their lives for Christ, the 5th seal saints in Revelation chapter 6. We find out of the Great Tribulation in Revelation chapter 7. There'll be, and the 144,000 witnesses, of course, will be God's first fruits after the rapture to teach the gospel out to the nations of the world. So there will be a Christianity afterwards, but it won't be the only choice that people will have at that point in time. You know, after the rapture, you know, people are going to think, well, gee, watch out now, here's going to come this world charismatic leader, the Antichrist, and things like that. But that's not really the issue here. Humanity has a double religious jeopardy in the end times. Remember, there's this other religion that comes forward, this harlot world religion in Revelation 17, that actually says the harlot rides the beast in Revelation 17. So what you have is the beast is sort of playing a subservient or second fiddle, the beast being, i.e., the Antichrist, for a common Christianese type term for him. And so who was that? You know, what does that harlot represent? And there's different theories on that. But see, it's interesting. After the rapture, of course, you're going to have the chaos going on in the Middle East with these other prophecies. You know, photo finish, which one's next, we don't know.
We don't.
But the world is going to be in a state of total flux. And like I said, they're going to be wanting answers and explanations. And who's going to be primed and ready for that? Of course, 144,000 will be preaching the message of Jesus. But who's going to be the counterfeit bride? Who's going to be the counterfeit gospel? We've got a mystery Babylon, a harlot out there.
Oh boy. What kind of elements do you think are going to be a part of that?
Well, I personally subscribe, and Revelation 17 is some of the most difficult commentary to understand and to teach, and that's why you've got expositors all across the boards. Some believe Mystery Babylon is Rome, you know, the left behind Roman Catholicism. Some believe it's America. Some believe it's Iraq. You know, these types of things. I subscribe to it's Roman Catholicism. I think the arguments are there. It's city on 7 hills. It's a city that reigns over the kings of the earth. It's the harlot is drunk with the blood of the saints and the martyrs of Jesus. And you know, and I know this is a difficult topic for some of the audience, but you know, Roman Catholicism was instrumental during the Inquisition periods of killing many what they called heretics, but we would call them true Christians at that time. And estimates are in the millions.
Yes.
You know, depending on whether you're listening to Protestant or Catholic sources, you don't get an accurate number. But you know, I think it is Roman Catholicism. But here's the issue here. That's going to be the thing that unites the world in a world religion. It's going to be a global religion before the Antichrist. And that's what people need to understand. It's not that the Antichrist is going to jump right on the scene immediately. He's got to emerge in power. But ultimately, when the harlot has overextended her usefulness to his coming system, we're told in Revelation 17:16 that he will have the 10 kings. He will give authority to them, and they will desolate the harlot. They will remove the harlot. And then what's interesting is we have to shift our attention to then what happens in the vacuum, the third religion, the religion of the Antichrist, and that's in Revelation 13.
And do you see that as being all about him and honoring him as God when he walks into the temple and sets himself up as God.
Yeah, he will ask for nothing short of that. He wants that. He wants the worship of the world. And we're told that they'll make an image. Of course, there'll be a false prophet. Some people say, well, gee, that might be the Pope, right? The false prophet. But the reality is, wait a minute, let's think about this. If Roman Catholicism is the harlot and it's desolated, why would the Pope all of a sudden have a change of heart and go, no, I need to exonerate this individual here? So the false prophet will put together an image, and we find out in Revelation chapter 13 that you'll have to, no one will be able to buy or sell. There'll be worship of this beast, and it won't be necessarily forced worship. It'll be people wanting to worship him, be part of a system because of the deception that's empowered by Satan. In 2 Thessalonians 2, where it says that there'll be no more restraint, and Satan will be able to come out with all signs and lying wonders to deceive humanity that they might believe the lie, which ultimately leads toward the propping up of the Antichrist. So we go from Revelation 17, the harlot, she overextends her usefulness. Revelation 13, here comes the Antichrist, and like you said, he goes into the temple of God, exalts himself above all that's called or worshipped as God. And that's when Jesus says to the Jews in that area, and then we get into the fourth religion, Judaism, get out of there. He said in Matthew chapter 24, verse 15, when you see the abomination of desolation as spoken by Daniel the prophet, get out of there immediately, because that's when a genocidal campaign of the Jews and the religion takes place by the Antichrist.
Now, some of our listeners may be wondering at what they're not hearing, and I think we're going to do a program on that. But where was Islam?
Yeah, we need to talk about Islam. Of course, people are concerned, and gee, will the Antichrist be a Muslim? And I think there's strong arguments against that. And Islam won't be the same going into the tribulation, and we're going to do a program about that. Let's talk about the fourth religion for a minute, because it's going to narrow down to just two: true Christianity and then the Antichrist, worship of the Antichrist. The harlot's going to give way, it'll be desolated. But Judaism, after Psalm 83, the prophecy, after Ezekiel 38, the prophecy, where the Jews, Israel's victorious in those prophecies, the way the nation of Israel will respond is not to necessarily jump on the Jesus train. They're going to want to build their temple, and they're going to want to reinstate the Mosaic law. So Judaism is going to be one of those religions at the time, and many of the Jews will become proselytized and go into Judaism. And however, that will be abruptly cut to an end when the Antichrist tries to commit suicide. And what happens is we get a faithful remnant. So we're told in Zechariah 13:8 that 2/3 of the Jews in the land will be cut off. It's going to be worse than the Holocaust of Hitler. But a third will come through that. That becomes a faithful remnant. Okay, and they will believe in Jesus Christ. They will recognize that Jesus was the Messiah. So ultimately, there's one religion in the end, and that's the religion of Jesus Christ.
Amen. That's the way, the truth, and the life.
That is it.
And that's all the time we have, but thanks, Bill, for being with us today.
Absolutely.
God bless you.